Hey, you guys. How's things? How have you been? All right. So I thought, okay, I'm going to be doing a whole bunch of Reader's Digest journals. And I thought since I had asked if you guys wanted to do some sort of like back to basics, like super simple beginning kind of junk journals, I thought that Reader's Digest would be perfect because okay, let me just say that I feel like everybody has their own definitions of what a junk journal is, right? And what it is not. And, there's a couple different schools of thought. Some people think that a junk journal is made from items that you found or rescued from somewhere for like not a lot of money or even free, or repurposed items like cake mix boxes, cereal boxes, that kind of thing, junk mail. And, when I first started making journals, that's what I did. I only used, like trash basically to make journals. And it's super fun. Like it really is. And it's awesome because I think that the basic idea for a junk journal is that it's made from junk, right? And it's just gotten, now, I mean, they're getting popular. Okay. Like there's quite a following now of, people that actually know what a junk journal is. And, anyway, so I guess, as time went by, I just started, since I started selling them and I'm, making a living making journals, I've gotten further and further away from those origins of, making journals out of cake boxes and stuff and cereal boxes and from my junk mail and whatnot and wrapping paper and packaging and that kind of stuff. And to be honest, like, I feel like that's the heart of junk journaling, and it's just really, really fun. And I respect everybody who is all about it, like that, the reduce, reuse, recycle, repurpose, because let's face it, there's a lot of stuff in the landfills that doesn't need to be there. And there's a lot of books that wind up in the landfills. So anyway, blah, blah, blah. Reader's Digest wind up in the landfills a lot. And so I thought these would be great because there's so many of them out there. You can find them at any thrift store, pick them up for 50 cents, a quarter, a dime, sometimes $1. And, they're just really easy to find. Not only that, they're just a great size, and the covers are cool. I mean, the covers are definitely pretty, even the kind of ugly ones are pretty, So anyway, I thought we could do that. And just sort of, and so I thought, well, what I'll do is I will try to use things from my stash that I know are things that I either got at a thrift store or, that I found some way. I'm not going to use papers that I spent a bunch of money on. I'm not going to use ledgers. I'm not going to use French ephemera. I'm not going to use, things that I put out a decent amount of money for. So, okay, so I'm not going to use onion skin paper. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use things that I know were either free to me or super cheap. Okay, so these Reader's Digests are in that category. And I have a whole bunch of other ones that I'm going to be making into journals soon also. Okay, sorry. Okay, so what happens is you find Reader's Digest and you think, oh, they're great, and then you get it home and then you try to gut it and all of a sudden the spine falls off. And then you're like, great, because like I don't know how to build a spine, and I don't know what to do with this, you know. So one of the options is to make it into a ring bound journal, right? Anytime your spine falls apart like that, it's a great opportunity to just make it into a ring bound journal, and go for it. You know, I don't like making ring bound journals, so I usually don't do that. What I'll do is I will rebuild a spine and make it into like a, you know, a book with signatures. Okay, so that happens. Or a lot of these older ones, so this one is from 1954. A lot of these older ones, they have a fabric spine, so many of these actually hold up better than the newer ones. So I think that is kind of interesting. So anyways, I'll just kind of real quickly show you how I would go about gutting this book. So first off, you kind of want to make sure that the actual spine part is separated from the book block. This is the book block. This is the spine. Okay. So then I will usually kind of bend this back just to sort of loosen it a little bit right along this edge. Okay. Right along this edge here. Okay. I try to kind of work it a little bit so that it loosens up. And then I just carefully take a sharp, like usually brand new X-Acto blade, and I just cut through that paper, because really that's all it is that's holding it in there. There's this very thin layer of like almost like cheesecloth type fabric, and then the end paper, and that's really all that's holding it together. And then on the back, same thing. I'll open the book all the way up like that so that the spine or the book block is exposed. And then I hold this with my fingers there just to kind of hold it over. And I know it's going to block, but then I'll take my knife and angling towards the book, not towards the spine. Always angle towards the book so you don't cut through your spine. And I will just cut straight down like that. This one was very easy. Sometimes they give you a hard time and you'll accidentally cut through the spine, and that's okay. You know, that can be fixed too. So then you have all this paper that you can do all kinds of stuff with. You can use this as your glue book when you're gluing images and stuff that you fussy cut. You know, you can put your image on the book and then apply your glue with the glue stick, you know, and then you can strip these pages off as you go, and then you always have a clean surface for applying glue. A lot of people do that. And then sometimes people will even, you know, save those pages and glue them together and make that into a thicker paper, like glue 3 pages together and use that to make tags and stuff. So if you're somebody who, you know, just makes like one journal and, you know, you don't have 500 books that you're gutting, that's great. Like maybe you can use all of this paper, you know, because really it's just paper, you know, it's, and it's totally usable. Me, a lot of times for Reader's Digest, I wind up putting these in the recycle bin, or I will use this book to start fires in the winter. So, you know, I'm just being honest. But at least it's, you know, it's being repurposed somehow. And I always save these end pages because those are cool and they're useful. So anyway, I'll set this aside for a second. This one where the spine has completely fallen off, I'm just gonna finish this up. Cut that off, tear off my end pages. And put those in the stack. Got a whole pile of them over here. Okay. And then what I'll do then is I'll just kind of clean this up along this edge. You can see where the end paper is loose here, and you sort of want to clean that up a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect though, but you want to be careful that you don't cut through that fabric on the spine, or you know, if it's a newer book and it's not fabric, you just want to be careful that you don't cut through that. Okay, so I always fold this all the way back, just to keep it out of the way of my scissors. And I like to use shorter scissors like this when I'm doing stuff like that, because I feel like I have better control. So, okay, this cover is kind of messed up, like it's kind of dented, and it's got this like dent right there, so I don't know, but I'm going to use it anyways. And then this one, where, you know, it's totally gone, I'm just going to trim off this little messy part right up to the book board. This one has a price tag on it for $2. I'm taking that off. Okay, and then I will show you my honest to God method of building a spine on this Reader's Digest. It's pretty easy, and it's really sturdy. So, you know, there's lots and lots of ways of doing it. This is just my way. Okay, so you know, make sure that they're upright. Make sure that they're, you know, the way they're supposed to be. Okay, like I don't want that little deer to be upside down. So that's up, and then basically what I use is fabric, and I use a little bit of cardstock paper. Okay, so this is just like a really thin muslin fabric that I got, I don't even remember where it came from, but maybe from a thrift store, or, oh wait, I think this was from the lady across the street. Okay, so what I want to do is I want a strip. Okay, so if I didn't already have a strip, I would tear a strip of this fabric so that it's wide enough that when I put these covers on there, that I have some hangover, like at least, I would say at least a ½ inch, okay, on each side. Now you have to decide how wide you want your spine to be. If you want it to be the same as the spine that it came out of, then just kind of hold that up there and just eyeball it and figure, you know, okay, well, that's about right, you know. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. So I know a lot of people use these to make bookmarks or to make tags out of them and that kind of thing. But, you know, honestly, when they're real crumbly like this and really brittle, I don't know. I throw them away. Anyway, okay, so so I will use one piece and it'll wrap around to the inside. If you don't have a strip that's long enough to do that, then you can just use 2 pieces, okay? But this is going to work out so that I can use one long strip. So I'm just going to fold that down and then tear it off so that it's long enough. I can always trim it a little bit shorter later, okay? So I have my covers and my fabric. And then now I need to decide how wide I want to make my spine exactly. And most Reader's Digests are about 1 3/4 inches. We might as well just, you know, go, well, let's measure it. Most of them are the same. Yeah, it's about 1 3/4 inches. It's 2 inches from that end paper to that end paper, but the actual book block itself, the spine itself, was about 1 inch and 5/8, to be honest. So we'll go with 1 3/4 inches, okay? And so this is just a real heavy cardstock. You could use any scrap piece of cardstock that you want. Like, you know, it's not ever going to get seen. So, you know, you could just use whatever you want. Oh, and then the height. Sorry. So you want to measure the height of these, of your book cover. If you're not using a Reader's Digest, it's, you know, whatever it is. But so this measures 7 5/8. I'm going to go with 7 1/2. I'm going to shorten it by 1/8 of an inch and cut this to 1. And so I already cut it to that length. Okay. I cheated. This is the second time I've done this video, you guys. Anyway, so cut my height, and then I'm going to cut my width. So I'm going to go 1 3/4. And then I need 2 of these, and I know I just scared somebody. I'm going to use 2 of this, 2 layers of cardstock. Okay, so if I was making 100 journals, I would do that 100 times. Or 200 times, because I need 2 for each one. Okay, so then I'm just going to glue these together. I'm going to use my glue stick. You could use chipboard. You could use like a thin chipboard. You could use recycled, you know, packaging, like from a cereal box or a cake mix or some, you know, Go-Gurts or whatever. Anyway, so I'm just gluing those together. It's basically making a little piece of thin chipboard. But I like to use the paper because it still retains some flexibility, and I like my book spines to have a certain softness. I like them to be somewhat flexible. I don't really like them when they're super stiff. I just don't like the way that feels in my hands when I'm, you know, when I'm playing with it. So anyway, so 2 layers of heavy cardstock. And then take my fabric, lay it out like that, and then my trusty glue stick again. And I'm going to glue this. I'm going to eyeball it, and I'm going to stick it down in the middle. Okay. Press it down. Okay, and then I'm going to switch to the PVA. You could use Aleene's Tacky Glue. You could even just use like Elmer's Glue All glue. Elmer's Glue All glue is good glue. Just saying. And it is basically a PVA. So, okay. So now make sure you got the front in the front, and it's upright, and the back in the back, and it's going the right direction. Okay. So then I'm going to just add a very thin coat of PVA glue right along here. And then I'm going to leave a gap of about 1/8 of an inch. Okay. Because I want there to be, it still needs to move. The spine needs to still be, you know, flexible, and you need to leave enough room so that when this cover closes, that paper doesn't inhibit the movement of the cover. Okay. Sometimes people will use like a spacer in there to be sure that, you know, they're leaving enough of a gap. I've done these so many times that I just kind of know it's about 1/8 of an inch. Okay. And do that again, and you just want to make sure that they're at the same height. the covers, okay? All right. And see, that gives us enough movement to where when this closes, that paper is not going to get in the way. All right. Then I'm just going to do PVA. So this will get another layer of fabric over it too. So this isn't the end. This is just like our first layer kind of. But this is actually pretty sturdy. Like, you know, this PVA glue is pretty strong, and it's nice because it stays flexible too. But you know, I used the glue stick on the bottom, and the reason I did that is because I don't like the glue to seep through the fabric. And I know that it could a little bit from what I put on the covers, but that's just like, I don't know. This is just what I do. I don't know why. I don't have an explanation. I mean, I kind of have an explanation, but not exactly. Anyway, so then I'll take my bone folder and make sure that I'll push this fabric down in between that paper and the spine, okay? Because I want to, that's kind of like our hinge. All right, and then just smooth this down. See the PVA glue, it seeps through, and that's what happens. That's why I don't put it on there, because it seeps through. Anyway, okay. So see, and now it moves really nicely. It's flexible, you know. And that's just holding it together. Like, that's going to hold this, it's going to hold this whole thing together. So then I just take the bone folder and press it down on both sides. Okay. So there, and then I will let this dry completely. And since I use such a thin fabric on here, like, you could use like a pillowcase, or you could even just use cheesecloth if you wanted to. A lot of times I just use that bandage that I love so much, or this really thin, super fine cheesecloth fabric. You can use that too. Just any like thinner type of like utility fabric. Okay, so I'll let this dry, and I will trim this off, or I'll tear it off, or whatever, later on down the road. And then basically, like, whatever other fabric I want to add over this, I'll just apply it the same way, you know. Start with the book face down, apply your fabric, glue it down. You could use fabric glue at this point if you wanted to, gluing fabric to fabric, and then flip it over and turn your strip in. If you don't want this part to show, make your other fabric a little bit wider, you know. Or if you want to do, okay, I don't want to get too complicated. I was going to say, if you're going to do a hidden spine, then, you know, there's other things that you might want to do. But for this, we're just gonna keep it simple. Okay, so that's pretty easy, right? I will probably wind up just using another piece of like muslin or something. This is, I forget what this is called, but I get this at Joann's, and it's in the utility fabrics. It kind of looks like malto meal. That's what it reminds me of. It's like malto meal. Anyway, so you could coffee dye this, or, you know, you could do whatever. You could use whatever kind of fabric you want. I just think I like to use thinner fabrics on spines just because it makes it easier for the book to move. Now, the other thing is, if you want this to have a slightly curved spine, then this is a good time to actually mold that paper into a little bit of a curve. Okay, so I do it on the edge of my desk. And I just get an ever so slightly curved spine. Can you see? So just because I think it looks nice, you know. Anyway, so I'm going to let that dry. And then I will move on to this one. So this is pretty easy, you know. Basically, I'm just going to add a piece of fabric on the inside of this. And I think that's all it's going to need, to be honest. This one still has the paper that comes in the spine. Like sometimes this paper that's on the spine here will be really loose, and if it is, you want to tear it out. Like you want to take it off and then replace it with another piece of like heavy cardstock. Okay, just measure it and glue it in with the PVA glue, or you know, you could use that Scotch Create glue sticks. Are actually really nice for gluing, like and you definitely don't want it to fall apart, you know. You can rely on that glue, that Scotch Create. And even the Scotch permanent glue sticks is really, really nice. This one, the Scotch permanent glue stick, this one is really, really good for gluing fabric, for, you know, I use it on book spines all the time, and I just don't happen to have any more of it right now. But anyway, so I'm just going to glue a piece of fabric. I'm going to cut it this way. Some people will do like book tape on here, or masking tape or something like that. I tend to just use a piece of utility fabric, and basically I'm just covering up those jaggedy, you know, edges from the book, from where I gutted the book. And I usually just tear it. I will also do some stitching on the spine with my sewing machine. So, you know, I know that that's not something that everybody would do or can do, but that's what I do. So, especially on the Reader's Digest. So I'm trying to not get glue down in the hinge. I really don't want to get glue down inside that hinge part. If I do, I don't want a lot. Like I really just want it in the center and along the sides on the inside of the cover. Pretty much just like that. And then just press this in. Use your bone folder. Or whatever, you know, you could use a credit card or just your fingers. Okay, and just let that dry. I will also curve this just a little bit, just to give it some shape. Didn't hold very well, but you know, you can kind of shape it with your fingers. So this seems like it's really flimsy and, you know, not very sturdy, but I'll tell you what, when that glue dries, this is going to be a lot stiffer than it is right now. Okay, that glue is going to add some body to this spine for sure. Okay, so that's if you don't want to cover up the outside of the spine. If you want to cover the outside of the spine because you don't like it or whatever, then do it like I did the other one and just use a double layer, you know. Sometimes if I feel like this is not strong enough, I will add another layer of fabric, okay? But I'm going to let it dry first and see how I feel about it, you know. If I used a thicker fabric, it would probably be stiffer. This fabric is relatively thin, so I might wind up adding another piece of fabric in there. I don't know. Or maybe just some cheesecloth too. So, okay, so this one's going to go over here. I'm going to form this. I'm going to curve this a little bit more though. And just kind of set it up so that it dries with that just a slight amount of curve to it. So then I've got some other covers that I think I want to try and use. This one has a really big gap between the book board and that spine. Has a pretty big gap. You can see the book was like really, was just formed differently, but isn't that pretty? I love that cover. So I am going to put, because this one I feel like it's going to be too flimsy, okay? Just because the fabric that's on there, and see, it has too much play. You see what I'm saying? So I'm going to add a piece of paper in there. I'm going to add a piece of this cardstock in the spine before I put my fabric on. So I want to do that. I want this to be about, let's say, I'm going to say an inch and 3/4. So this is that same paper. Oh, I got to measure the height. Hold on. Hold the phone. Okay. So 8 3/8 is the height of the book. But I don't need, I'm going to do this first, and then 8 3/8. Actually, you know what? I think I'm going to do 2. I'm going to do 2 pieces. An inch and, because this, for some reason, this piece of cardstock is a little bit thinner than the other sheet that I had. I don't know why. You want it to be like about the thickness of like a cereal box or something, you know? Anyway, so now I'm going to glue those together because there's already a layer of paper in that spine, but I want it to be just a little bit thicker, a little bit more sturdy, because that's a bigger book cover too, and I don't want it to be flimsy. Flimsy and flexible and soft are 2 different, 3 different things, right? Okay. So this fabric from the original binding is kind of coming loose a little bit. So I'm just sticking it down with a little bit of PVA. Okay, so then this will fit in there nicely. Perfect. Okay, and I'm going to glue this in with PVA. Not a lot, just a little. I still have a little bit of a gap in between the cover and that paper that I'm gluing in. There's about 1/8 of an inch gap. So the other thing that I like to do too is to kind of dampen this paper, because I want to be able, let me make sure this isn't rubbing alcohol. Okay. I like it to be just a little bit soft so that I can form that curve in the spine. Okay. And if you get that just a little bit damp, it'll hold that curve better. It'll be easier to form that curve on the spine. Okay. So then I'm just gonna, wait, do I want to cover the outside of this too? No, I think I'm just gonna do the inside. So I'm gonna use that same fabric, eyeball it. Yeah, it's gonna work. So I do want there to be good coverage when I glue the fabric on here, because I don't want it to be lifting up or shifting around at all when people open and close the book. And I may wind up adding another layer of fabric on this too. Oh, the other thing too is that sometimes these end papers where it's glued onto the book board, sometimes that's lifting. So you have to make sure and check that. And if it is lifting, use some like art glitter glue or some kind of white glue or whatever and glue that paper back down too. Because it doesn't make sense to glue something onto that paper if that paper is lifting up, right? Okay. So I can kind of see through this a little bit, so I can tell, you know, that I'm like basically in the center. Okay, and then I use my bone folder again. And I want to push this fabric down into that gap. And make sure it's glued down all the way on the top and bottom. Okay, and then I'm going to form this on the edge of my desk. Yeah, and I think that's a really good thickness too. There. See, it's just got a little bit of a curve. And I just think that looks nice. So, okay, and then I'm going to let this one dry, and then I'll later come back and trim this off, or sometimes I'll tear it. But you have to be careful if you're going to tear it, because sometimes you'll tear it off. You know, you want to be careful if you're going to tear it. But anyway. Okay, so that is basically how I would deal with a couple of different covers, different situations for, you know, different covers for a hardcover book that you're repurposing. Now, like I said, I will do some machine stitching along the inside of the spine. And I have also done some stitching on the actual book board too. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that on these, just because I am trying to kind of keep these simple. So anyway, so that's where I'm going to end this video. And then when the next one, I will come back and we'll choose like some papers and stuff, and we'll start actually assembling signatures to put into these. Okay. So, all right. So there you go. All right, guys. Love you. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.